Mr. Linda Mbonambi from Durban, South Africa. He is the head of area-based management, the area-based management unit of the eThekwini municipality in Durban. So Linda is a people person. His work is all about people and places and spaces. And Linda, let me introduce you to Serena Kovolosky, all the way from upstate New York. This is rural America.
Wow,
And
hello.
she's into gardening and farming. Her homestead is a farm.
Wow.
And she once told me she can go skiing. She can ski cross country from her back door. That's what she said.
Oh,
So there you go. Two different
wonderful.
parts of the world. I'm in the, well, three different parts of the world, but Linda and I are in South Africa. I'm in the Western Cape, South Africa. Linda is in KwaZulu-Natal. And Serena, you are in upstate New York, USA. So this is wonderful. It's a good global connection, and I welcome you both. Thank you very much for making time to come onto the show as well to discuss eco gardening, sustainability, and how it brings people together, creates the merging of human beings, and also produces better lives out of this. That's what the discussion is about. And the theme of our show today focuses on human rights. So, for Serena's benefit, tomorrow is Human Rights Day in South Africa.
Mm.
For the past
Excellent.
30 years, we've had March 21st set aside as Human Rights Day in our country. As you know, prior to those 30 years, our country was, well, a large portion of our citizenry were victims of inhumane treatment on all levels. And that we are here today and connecting with you in your country today, we hope to spread from you to us, from us to you, and just all through this lovely gathering of just three people. We hope to spread the goodness of what it means to be a whole human being and how we can change this world, because we are ordinary people doing extraordinary things. That's what I believe, and that's how gardening resonates with my own world. A gardener changes the atmosphere. He changes what it looks like. You just give him a piece of land and give him some plants to work with, and or her. And what do you have at the end of the day? A beautiful garden where the birds come, the animals enjoy, and we human beings enjoy. So without further ado, I shall start with Serena, because ladies first. So, Serena, you moved back to your family homestead in upstate New York in 2020. It was this major move in your life which set you on this amazing path of rediscovering your art journey through your eco gardening project. Tell me how your Weeds to Flowers project came to be.
Well, the project was something that has been a childhood curiosity for me. I grew up gardening with my mom, since I was like 5 years old. We'd be gardening side by side, pulling all the weeds in the vegetable garden, and so I've always had my hands in the dirt, and I've always loved that. And my art, once I got older and started doing my artwork, my art is also based on nature and earth and land, and so I drew a lot from being in the woods and also being in the garden. So that was it wasn't anything new to me. And I moved away and lived in cities and came back to the garden that I actually worked in when I was really young. And what happened was, well, COVID hit. I really wasn't intending to stay in upstate New York terribly long. COVID hit, and I kind of, had this whole thing of, wondering what all these weeds were. Even when I was a kid, the curiosity of seeing these little flowers that would come up. And of course, they'd be weeds. And my mom was very, very particular about making sure that the garden, every single weed had to be pulled. So all those little flowers, all those little things that would come up would get pulled. The lawn would be mowed. And that was an era too where, you know, it was like the 1950s, 1960s. And everybody had those pristine lawns. You know, you couldn't have, you know, no dandelions, no, you know, no nothing. So that was just part of what all neighborhoods because I live in a small town, so that's what our neighborhood looked like. It was all very, you know, nicely manicured lawns. And I mean, it wasn't a rich area by any way, shape, or being, but it was, you know, everybody had their vegetable gardens and everybody had these nice, beautiful lawns. So I never had the opportunity to see what those plants looked like after they grew older, if I, you know, let the weeds grow. And then COVID hit, and my mom had been ill for quite some time, and she died, you know, around that same era. And I, you know, started looking at my yard again and my garden again, and I'm like, maybe I need to focus in my backyard now because I couldn't go anywhere. So all of my art and all of my focus and the whole eco garden project kind of started with that. My whole focus just moved towards gardening again after having been away from it for quite some time.
Lovely. Thank you very much for that, Serena. It's very interesting how you speak about these pristine gardens where we have to have perfect lawns and weed free. Because my own experience of the garden that we have here, initially we had what they called a weed problem. So we live on an estate, and I started to admire the weeds, and I actually loved them. We came back after a trip, and they looked so beautiful. And one of our friends drove us back to our house, and I said, "Just look at my garden. It looks so beautiful. Look at these wild flowers on the property." And he said, "But those are weeds. Your homeowners association is going to ask you to cut them down." So
Yeah.
I think there's a very different perspective of what is a weed and what is an indigenous plant. And we'll come back to that later on. So, Linda, let's talk about the concept of placemaking and how it prompted you to create such a beautiful rooftop eco garden / farm in the heart of the city of Durban.
Right. Thank you very much. Greetings again to both of you. Serena, lovely to meet you. And Michelle. Michelle and I go a long way. I'm friends with her hubby, Kevin. And so we've known each other for some time. Yeah. Just zooming into the question. I must acknowledge first that this was a team effort. All right, it was a team effort because maybe if I give you a little bit of history, Durban started to see itself as a important events city. You know, so we were seeking to use events as a way of staking our claim in the world. Events were gonna bring the world to Durban and take Durban to the world. So critical infrastructure was established around this idea. One of the biggest of those is the establishment of the International Convention Center. In fact, I think Durban was the first city in South Africa to have such an ambitious, beautiful, architecturally designed International Convention Center. And what it did, it started to draw in a number of visitors to Durban for conferencing, eventing, and hotels started to get bookings and so on. But what was an unintended consequence is that we started to notice that there is a certain level of over proliferation of criminality around the precinct. And also what we started to see was that a number of people who had either owned buildings or were leasing buildings we're not taking good care of the buildings, and also the general ambience, the parks and everything else around. We're not really taking good care of to the level that they were on par with the idea of bringing Durban to be a place of eventing, a place of, you know, of a melting point, as it were. So fast forward, this project was established in 2009 as essentially a placemaking project where we're going to do three things. Quickly, ensure that there's safety around the precinct, so work with law enforcement to make sure that we get everything in order. And secondly, we needed to create a sense of place through making sure that we keep our the parks, the gardens in and around the city in a good and pristine condition. And thirdly, we just needed to make sure that the entire use, the entire management of the space, it's a space where everyone feels that they are part of Durban, as it were. So we also just had to make sure that we build relations with other users in the space, like our neighbors who were hoteliers and other people who were using the space for a whole range of other issues like businesses, the taxi ranks that were around us. So we had to ensure that we work with them. So we then get into this building, which was just an ordinary building. Our idea was we just needed to have an office to use to facilitate proper placemaking, proper urban management. Little did we know that the top of this building was just a flat roof, right? And then it dawned on us, what can we do with this? What we needed the bottom floor where we are. But what we also realized that there's an opportunity of creating something marvelous, something magnificent out of this. That's how the whole idea of the rooftop garden was born. And I also must say this, it is not the experts that came with an idea. It is colleagues who are lovers of nature who said, why don't we start a rooftop garden? And we started to investigate the possibility of doing this. Then we brought in the engineers, we brought in the architects, we brought in other people to say, if we're to establish a rooftop garden, what will it take for it to be properly established in terms of making sure that it's sustainable in terms of use, and what kind of materials that we have to establish to allow people to go up to the roof in the first place. Then, so I think that's what we have, and I'll talk about it in the next few minutes as well.
That's marvelous, Linda. And I have to say, it was one of the best surprises I had on my whole trip when I came to Durban in January, when you took us upstairs. Well, the journey upstairs was an experience, but when we got to the rooftop, it was just phenomenal. So I have a little video, little rooftop garden, and I'm going to play.
Wow.
It's a Facebook reel. So let me just share the screen. love the way you utilized discarded objects like old shoes and just about anything that can be repurposed as plant pots. That was very interesting. And just for Serena's benefit, this is the day we visited the garden slash farm. And that's the city of Durban. Amazing what you did here, Linda. Absolutely amazing. So do you want to talk about that painting in the background?
Sure. I think what yeah, sure. I think what this garden does, it creates a confluence of different ideas. I mean, for example, the painting. I know that your reel is moving very fast, but the painting was really a way of making the art community of Durban, the artists, to give us a gift of how can we be able to look at the city through the eye of an artist. So that's one thing beautiful about it. As you can see, what that artwork does, the artist decided to paint, to give a beautiful paint of a road, the main street of Durban, being a street which is full of plants and food that is growing, and it just gives you a different idea of what a garden is about, of what gardening is all about. And also, we grew up in a context where we always known or associated plants with an activity that is made in a far-flung part of the city, like a farm, for example. So to have the city as a space that allows to have the city as a place that it's a space where you can grow food. It's quite transformative in its own.
Wonderful. Thank you, Linda. Thank you very much for that. Appreciate it. And Serena, I have to ask you your opinion of this garden. I know it's just a very short reel, but as a master gardener yourself and someone who does farming, what is because they also have a food section to this massive garden slash farm. So what is your opinion of it and the artwork they've incorporated into this massive garden on a rooftop?
Well, it's beautiful. I mean, my first question for Linda would be, what plants are there? Because as a fellow person who enjoys plants and enjoys creating something that I'm assuming people would come up to see and to experience, and my question would be, how did the selection of plants happen? So they've got some plants that people can use for food. Were there other kinds of plants? Were they native plants? Because those are some of the questions that I've started to ask myself as I'm deciding what stays and how do I manage my own eco garden. And because it's, it can be used for educational as well as, changing the whole ecosystem of where you are. So I guess that's my question. Like, what plant are they native? Are they, what are the plants that are there?
That's a very good question. The number of the plants that are in the garden it's a combination. We have native plants, we have herbs. You'll ask the reason why native plants. Native plants, in our context, they are very helpful because they are less demanding in terms of water, and we also have vegetables, right? So we grow all sorts of vegetables. We grow beetroot, we grow spinach. But we rotate the growing of the food so that we can be able to allow a proper crop rotation and the revitalization of the soil. And yes, I think the whole idea of but let me also just say this: we are growing. Whatever we're growing is not grown for mass consumption. It's a garden which is really a demonstration of what a city could be. You can actually grow food in the city. Obviously, if you can be able to find a way of getting many other users of buildings or owners of buildings to start their rooftop, then you can start to see an expansion of the scale. But for now, it's just about working with the idea of creating a green building. And it's also part of the bigger effort to contribute to ideas of climate change, to say we can be able to create a cooler city through being innovative about how do we use a very limited space. Yeah, so and obviously the food that the vegetables that are grown gets given out to charities around the city, and it's also about creating an opportunity for people to learn the skills of growing and maintaining a garden. And so we've had a number of people who've gained skills, and some of them have started to branch out to work as horticulturalists and landscapers and so on. So it's a number of things. As you saw in that video that was played, apart from growing, we also have a big recycling culture that you can grow food in a shoe, you can grow food in a bottle, and so the whole idea that we must stop this throwaway culture that we have as human beings. We must find a way of giving what is supposed to go to a landfill site a new lease of life. Then it then adds ideas of beautification as well. So yeah, in a nutshell, that's what we try and do.
Marvelous, Linda. That's brilliant.
Yes.
Serena, I would like you to share some of your sustainability efforts in your garden with Linda. If you have a piece of art or something that we can look at and you can just describe what's going on in your garden to create even these pieces, that would help.
Yeah, well, I have a piece right here behind me that was created from one of the first projects I did from the garden. And so I started in 2020. So that means that I've had 3 seasons, 3 years of having a growing season. And what I did was, like I said, I just started letting things grow because my mom had passed away, so she wasn't going to be mowing things down on me. She always did that. I'd have things out there and she'd have them all mowed down because everything had to look good. So I'm like, well, I'm just going to just let everything grow and see what happens. And I started with the vegetable garden because, my mom had just passed. I didn't feel like weeding it anyway. And what grew was all these little flowers that I loved as a child grew to almost 6 feet high. And it's called fleabane, and it's a form of native aster. And apparently New York is quite well known for its asters. They have a million different kinds of asters, and I had quite a few of them, not just the fleabane. I have white asters, I have purple asters, and that all started growing. And I'm like, this is amazing. And the clover, which is not native, but that's okay. All sorts of plants were just starting to grow. And I'm like, what am I going to do with all this now? So I had all these beautiful weeds, and people thought I was nuts. Of course, it's the whole, like your housing authority that said, oh, those are weeds, you can't keep them. Well, I had neighbors, that were kind of giving me the, glancing, giving me the side glance going, what is she doing? It's like, no, there's a project going on, trust me. And the more I let grow, the more I wanted to let grow. So then I started letting areas of my yard grow. And then it got to the point where I was just seeing because I'm in town. I'm not in the country. I'm in town. So I'm in a neighborhood and I'm letting, portions of my garden, my yard grow, which, looks kind of funny to people walking by. And I started taking a note of what each plant was. Now, I am not a naturalist, but I'm learning. And there's this app called iNaturalist that really, really, really was quite helpful. I would just take a picture, and then the iNaturalist community would come in and say, okay, this is what it is. And I started identifying all the plants in my yard. And I'm up to almost 70 different species of plants right now. And this is just in my backyard in little town of Whitehall, New York. So that got to be pretty amazing. And the other amazing thing, which I noticed last year, which, like I said, is my 3rd year, is the whole ecosystem has changed, because when I was a kid, there were butterflies, and there were, the monarch butterflies in particular, and there were all sorts of the little woolly bear caterpillars, and there were ladybugs and praying mantises and all of these insects and dragonflies. And as I got older and would come back to the house to visit, I never saw them so much anymore. Less people had gardens, more people, they just didn't, they didn't plant anything anymore. So I thought, oh my gosh, there's no more bumblebees, no bees, none. I mean, I would see maybe 2 bumblebees a year, and that would be it. By the 3rd year of just letting things grow, last year, I couldn't believe how many bees there were. All the bumbles came back. I had like 9 dragonflies sitting on my clothesline one day. I'm like, 9 dragonflies. That was like unheard of. I had 3 praying mantises I saw last year, which you just never see. It's like they're all coming back. So, maybe they're coming from other areas and just living on my property. But the fact that the bees are back, the pollinators are back, the birds, there's more different kinds of birds are starting to hang around. I changed the ecosystem within 3 years. That's amazing. And I left everything. I didn't, some are native and some things were not native that grew. And right now I'm just keeping it all because I'm not sure. I'm trying to keep the non-native ones from getting, too big. But it's been amazing. It's been an amazing experience.
I mean, I find it fascinating what Serena is sharing. That's what we've started to see with our garden. We've started to attract butterflies, bees, and birds, and so yeah, it's amazing how something, a small action, can change the way in which the ecosystem works. In a very small scale. So yeah, it's beautiful to see, and obviously very, very, very much fulfilling. Yeah.
Fulfilling. And I have to say, Linda, when I did come to the garden, the ABM garden, I was listening out for the birds. I saw a few of the birds as I walked through the garden, but I was listening because I've been away from Durban for a while, but I still remember the different birds, and I'm good with bird sound because I can actually identify the bird by the bird song. So I was listening, and I recorded some of the bird song, and I added it to your video. And I must say, a good garden attracts all kinds of wildlife. And it's wonderful to see this on a rooftop. I think that's what blew my mind away, that this was all happening on a rooftop. So,
Right.
Linda, how is this fostering community, firstly, in the organization, in the municipality, for those attached to your part of the municipality, the ABM unit? How is this fostering community amongst people who work there? And in terms of the larger community, I'm not sure whether this garden is open to everybody, but how is it fostering community outside of the organization as well?
Wow, good question. We use the garden as a space to have meetings as colleagues. Often, because our buildings, however small it is, but we have about 2 boardrooms, which also attract interest from other colleagues in other parts of the city. When they come, they will use our boardrooms and more importantly, go up to the garden and use it as a space for meeting. And when we have interesting work to do around thinking about our process, we go up to the garden and have dialogues and conversations, so it makes us to relate in a different way than we would if there was no garden and just a set of 2 boardrooms. If I may also share that we open our space to the community as well. In fact, we operate that garden on a 24/7 basis, because we have 3 security who help us to keep the space properly operational and not open to abuse. So we're able to allow members of the community even from outside to come anytime and use the garden. So a couple of people have come to use the space to host the music festivals. Music festivals attended by less than 60 people, but I mean, and some of those are also captured digitally so that they are able to attract a bigger audience even outside the city, outside the country for that matter. Some creatives, like artists, have used the garden to for photo shoots, for example. Some people approach us to use the garden to host the birthday parties for kids. So kids have got fun. So not so long ago, maybe about a year ago, we then put swings in the garden because we wanted it to be more child friendly, as it were. You know, I mean, I must say this: tomorrow we are going to be hosting a a leadership team building for young kids who are school going age, who are coming to learn the art of leadership, and so we're gonna have people who are experienced team building experts to help them with obstacle course and that kind of stuff. So yeah, it's a space that we use to make people of Durban to come together as well.
Marvelous, Linda. And I know that you are an advocate for fostering human environments. That is your passion. Well done on this garden. Well
Thank
done.
you.
And
Thank you.
Serena, well done on your end as well for what you've done. I'd just like you to share with Linda what aspects of your art, and I did read something about winemaking coming out of your garden. I know you created inks and you've created art with it. Just give Linda a quick rundown of how you developed that part of your project. It's very interesting.
Well, since COVID, obviously you don't have anything else to do. You're in your backyard. You're going to think of things to do, and being a creative. And I was exploring all of these plants. The first thing I started thinking of was, geez, I wonder if I can make wine. So I had all these dandelions, and so of course the first thing you think is dandelion wine is a big deal here. I mean, everybody. There's a lot of people that try to make dandelion wine. So I started off with dandelion wine, and then I thought, well, geez, I wonder what else I can make wine out of. So I made clover wine, and I made mint wine. I made the wine out of the tomatoes in my garden. I have all this wine. I haven't tried much of it yet. There's a few that I've tried. It's not too bad, but I'll be working on that. So that I did just for fun, but then it also got into my artwork because before, I mean, I was always doing art that was informed by nature, but more on the bigger scope of things like earth and rivers and fire. And so they were more the elements. And now, like I said, here I am, it's COVID, and I can't go out and, look at rivers and things like that. So I thought, well, what if I look at what I'm doing in my backyard? And with all of this research I was doing on each of the plants, I decided that how cool it would be to make artwork out of each of the 70 species that's in my garden. And not only make artwork about that, but then also look into the history. Like, you got the science going on, so you make the artwork from foraged parts of whatever plant you're working with, but then look into the history of each of them. And that's where the interesting stories come in, and then start making a series of artwork from that. For example, this is what I made. This is the first thing I made. And so this would be like the science aspect of the artwork. This is a gourd, which which is a good thing to use as a base. The inside is walnut ink. So I made an ink out of walnut to make it that nice, beautiful velvety brown. These are mulberry leaves, actual mulberry leaves. And I don't know how well you can see these. And these are mulberry leaves that I treated with I made skeletons out of them, which takes the pulp out.
Can you hold it closer to your camera? Yeah, just, oh, wow. I
So you can kind of see, and these are the actual leaves, because the leaves, from a scientific point of view, like, take a look at this leaf. I mean, these leaves are just so amazingly shaped. They're like artists would make them. And each leaf is very, very different. And then on the bottom, because they have mulberries, what I did is I used mulberry. I don't know if you can see the red color. I used
Yes.
mulberry ink to paint the mulberries that I put on here. And then this around the edge is actual mulberry bark. I don't know, can you see that? Does that show very well? Right along here, that's bark. Bark from the mulberry.
Okay, I
Got
see
it?
that. Yes.
Yeah.
Wow.
So this is just to show, like, scientifically what that plant was about. And the mulberries was an interesting story because this kind of mulberry tree is not native. And when I let the backyard grow, a whole grove of mulberry trees just sprung up, and they're not native. And when I did history, I found that the white mulberry, which is what was growing, has a historical link to the silk industry, because the silkworms that are used in the silk industry, that's the only food they eat. And I'm like, why would they be in Whitehall, New York? Because we have a silk mill, and a lot of people were growing. They were bringing over, because China wanted to expand the silk mill. So what they did is they also exported their white mulberry trees. And so they brought them mostly to the northeast of the United States. So this whole area has tons of white mulberries. Unfortunately, it kind of eradicated the native red mulberries, which you can almost never find anymore. But that's why they were all here. And I was going to cut them down because they're not native. And I'm like, but look at the history. You just can't, you can't do that. So I'm keeping them kind of as bushes. I keep cutting them down so they're not so big. But so there's a story. Like, you look at the stories that are underneath your feet, and you just listen to the plants. And what's really cool is I just did a presentation right in my yard. Like, invited people to come over, see the mulberry trees, look at the artwork. And they were just so fascinated. I have people coming over now and saying, oh, I've got a mulberry tree in my backyard. And so they're learning about their own history, because I'm the last generation that remembers the silk mill in Whitehall. And my family moved here to Whitehall, New York from Quebec, Canada, because they could get a job in the silk mill. So it's just the history, the immigration is just a lot of really, really good stories. So yeah, I'm going to do this with all the rest of the 70 plants that I'm
Wonderful.
working
Serena,
on.
thank you very much for telling us about that. And I'm sure Linda's just impressed at what he saw with that piece of art. So all good things have to come to an end. You both, Linda from Durban and Serena from Whitehall, upstate New York. It was an honor to have you both on this show discussing eco-gardening. This is a very important and a very interesting topic. And I'd like to grow this movement here on the People of Purpose talk show. This is just the beginning. I'd love to grow this movement because I also see it as a very compassionate movement. I consider gardening compassionate, and I think it will eliminate cruelty in our world if we paid more attention to the earth. I think that's the source of our beings, and that we are doing this kind of thing, promoting sustainability through gardening and growing eco gardens, and just the various ways that we are doing it. And looking at you both from like right across the world, different parts of the world, doing the same thing on different platforms and achieving at the end of the day better humanity. So therefore, I will ask each of you the final question, as this is our human rights theme show. Linda, this time we'll go with you. What does human rights mean to you?
Interesting question. I think human rights to me means affording and affirming the rights of individuals and groups to be who they are. That's what fundamentally human rights is about. And yes, and honoring and affirming choices, decisions, and the very being of people, places, histories, uh, uh, as it were, and also celebrating each other in our diversity and honoring that diversity, and also just seeing that diversity as a resource, not as a problem. So that's, in a nutshell, would fundamentally constitute the human rights.
Thank you. That was beautiful. Absolutely. And I received what you said. Thank you, Linda.
Thank you.
Serena, the same question to you. What does human rights mean to you?
Well, Linda explained it so well. I couldn't add much to that. He covered everything. But the one thing I would like to say that as an artist and using the eco garden and the artwork that I do in service of human rights, it's a way of doing it to be able to change people's perspectives and having them realize the interconnectedness of each other through the interconnectedness of nature, and finding those parallels. Because I think that if you can change how people perceive each other, then you can do a lot to change the world. I've always said that if you want to make change, there's the thing, if you want to make change, start in your own backyard. So, look at the plants under your feet and let them tell their stories, and let that become a part of you, and then learn other people's stories. And I think that we can become more interconnected. I think if we can just learn to realize that the birds are connected, the bees are connected, the plants are, nature knows it's interconnected, and humans are part of nature. We are nature. So we should all find what our place is, and then give what we can, so that everybody can thrive.
Marvelous. Thank you both very much for this moment. And I really appreciate you coming on the show to share your expertise, your knowledge, and also what you have achieved on the two different projects. So to take it a step further, you're both copied in on the email, but I shall share both your emails with each other again, so you can continue the conversation, the discussion between Whitehall, upstate New York, and Durban, because I think, Serena, you would love to learn about our local flora here in South Africa. It's incredible. I spoke
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yes, it's absolutely incredible what we have available throughout the entire country. It's just it's a world of its own. Our country is a world of its own with our plant life. And funny thing is, I spoke to someone in an orchid society online, and so he wanted to know if I had an orchid passport for the orchids I buy in, well, wherever I buy them, whether it's at a plant nursery or at a supermarket, because we also have supermarkets that sell orchids. It's very popular here, and orchid farming is popular here. And so I said, we have 560 species of indigenous orchids here. And he was like, oh, really? I didn't know that. So the thing is, just by connecting and talking to each other, this is life learning. So I leave you both to continue the conversation, and we shall grow it. We'll grow this movement of sustainability and eco gardening. I love the whole concept. So thank you both. And to Linda, happy Human Rights Day for tomorrow. And
Happy Human Rights Day for you tomorrow as well. Yes.
Thank you very much. Serena, thank you for coming abroad to South Africa, even if it's virtually. And thank you for bringing your knowledge, your wisdom, and also your gift as an artist, because you shared that piece that you've completed, that piece of the God work. I will share with Linda through WhatsApp. I will share your video of your actual work. And you did sell a piece recently as well. So congratulations on that.
Thank you.
And God bless you both. And I'm now on to the next show. I've got a 9 o'clock with New York again. So God bless you both, and have a wonderful, wonderful week ahead.
Thank you. Good to meet you, Linda.
Lovely visiting you, Serena.
Yeah, we'll stay in touch.
Thank you. Cheers.
Yes, stay in
Bye.
touch. That's it. Marvelous.
Love-
Bye-bye. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Cheers.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.